Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 10th, 2026 Asheville City Council meeting. If you could just take a moment to silence your cell phones. If you want to sign up to speak tonight on any item on the agenda, please make your way out to the hall and let them know, and they'll put you on our sheet so you're in front of us. If you would take a moment to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple of items. First, I'm going to, as a precursor to our evening, I'm going to read our chamber decorum statement. Members of the public attending council meetings or addressing the council shall abide by the following rules. Everyone shall follow the instructions of the mayor or any other presiding officer or official, and shall refrain from impeding or interrupting the conduct of business. This shall include, but not be limited to, clapping, yelling, or other audio expressions of approval or disapproval of comments made during the meeting. Persons addressing the council are expected to observe the decorum of the chamber, to be respectful of the council and the public, to refrain from the use of profanity or foul language, to refrain from personal attacks and commentary on candidates for political office, and to refrain from making disclosures prohibited by the Personnel Privacy Act with respect to any city employee. Failure to abide by these rules may subject you to removal from the council chamber. Thank you. And before we begin our agenda, I just want to take a moment to recognize that we have had some very serious incidents in our community over the last few days. And right before we started this council meeting, the chief who was walking in, Chief Jackie Stepp, and I issued a joint statement, and I just want to read it. It's not too long, just so you are aware. Our hearts and thoughts are with the families who have lost loved ones, the victims grappling with trauma, and all the members of our community who are feeling the pain and fear caused by the recent gun violence in Asheville. Over the past 3 days, Asheville has experienced multiple incidents of gun violence that directly affected our city. While these incidents appear unrelated, some of these incidents were conflicts that escalated into the use of firearms. Behind every one of those incidents is a person, a family, and a neighborhood impacted. Our residents deserve to feel safe in their neighborhoods and public spaces. And we must work together as a community, not just during crises, but through ongoing efforts to promote peace and safety for everyone. The Asheville Police Department is actively investigating these incidents. In addition, the APD is collaborating with its federal, state, and local partners, focusing on identifying and prosecuting repeat violent gun offenders. The APD has also increased police presence in areas where gun violence has occurred. We call on the entire Asheville community to join in preventing further violence. Stopping gun violence requires more than law enforcement. It requires the coordinated effort of city leaders, community members, and organizations working together. It also requires partnership to ensure that those who inflict harm in our community on our community members are held accountable for their actions. By sharing information and cooperating with police, residents can help minimize retaliation, solve crimes more quickly, and create safer neighborhoods for everyone. For those who would like to share information anonymously, please contact APD at 828-252-1110. You can also send an anonymous tip using the tip 2, that's the number 2, APD smartphone application. Search Asheville PD on your app store, or by texting tip to APD to 847-411. And this is also available on the city website. So thank you for that and indulging me in that, reading that statement. Okay, next on our agenda, we have one proclamation, and that is Red Cross Month. And I know that Jerry Goldberg is here, so if you'll meet me down at the podium. Whereas the American Red Cross chapter serving Western North Carolina, including Asheville, has a long history of helping our neighbors in need by delivering shelter, care, and hope during disasters, making our community safer through its life-saving Home Fire campaign, providing life-saving blood, teaching skills that save lives, and supporting military members, veterans, and their families. And whereas last fiscal year in Western North Carolina, 204 active volunteers assisted 625 people affected by 208 local disasters. Most home fires trained more than 9,000 people in first aid, CPR, and AED, and preparedness, collected nearly 24,000 units of blood, and provided 353 emergency services to military members, veterans, and their families. And whereas since Hurricane Helene made landfall, the Red Cross has awarded more than $39 million in long-term recovery grants to nonprofits and provided more than $5 million in financial assistance to affected families in Western North Carolina. And whereas these collective efforts are a powerful reminder that the strength of our community lies in our shared commitment to one another, and whereas we thank and honor the selfless volunteers, dedicated employees, and generous supporters who make this compassionate work possible. Now therefore I, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim March 2026 as Red Cross Month. So congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Of course, my fellow community members. I really don't have much prepared. I just wanted to say that our community is an extremely resilient community. It speaks volumes. I have been deployed all over the United States for hurricanes over the last 10 years. And what I witnessed during Helene and the continued effort, what is still going on, it's amazing. It really is. And it's all due to the strength and the resilience of our community. There's a lot of good work still going on. I'm partial to the Red Cross, but please, if the Red Cross doesn't call to you, volunteer somewhere, because there's still so much crucial work going on. And there's a place for everyone to participate in that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, that concludes our proclamations for this evening. Council, I need a motion, just hang with me for a second. I need a motion to amend the agenda, to add a motion to amend the consent agenda. That seems like kind of redundant, but to reschedule the March 24th budget work session from 3 o'clock to 2 o'clock. All this is a motion
So
to change the
moved.
time.
Second.
You got that? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. Now I need a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, I don't have anyone to signed up to speak under this item. Do any of you have any questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've adopted the consent agenda. Now I'm turning it over to our manager, DK Wesley, for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one item under the manager's report today, and that'll be Bridget Herring, our recovery coordinator. She'll be giving a progress update on where we are today.
Great, thank you so much. Madam Mayor, members of council, good evening. Again, my name is Bridget Herring. I'm the recovery coordinator. I just want to give a high-level snapshot of a few of our aspects of recovery this evening. So the key takeaways I want to leave you with is that the work is happening. We are working really hard to maximize cost recovery, to minimize any impacts to our budget in other ways, and really thinking about an eye on resilience and the infrastructure that we're rebuilding. I recognize that the recovery funding remains slow to be available to our community, but that the city is working in really close partnership with both our state partners and our federal partners to advance the work as quickly as we possibly can of what's in our sphere of control. And that based on the feedback from you all and the Infrastructure Recovery Board, the city manager has revised the CDBG-DR infrastructure allocation to reserve funding for future Resilience Hub investments. So I want to close the loop on that. So starting with the FEMA Public Assistance Program, just as a quick reminder, this funding source is solely focused on repair from damage caused by Tropical Storm Helene. You may have read some of the stories in the news that the Department of Homeland Security is experiencing a shutdown right now. And so how that's affecting our work is that FEMA staff is not working on any permanent work projects. So they're still working on debris removal and emergency protective measures, but not the permanent repairs. However, we're not delaying any work at this time. We're monitoring this situation closely and are hopeful that it'll be resolved before it creates any undue impacts on our projects and our community. I do want to give some recognition to our congressional delegation. They've been advocating really diligently for the city of Asheville and Western North Carolina and getting resources. And we've seen some obligations come through. And so just want to recognize that partnership and lift that up for everybody. So this is a little snapshot by the numbers. You've seen this slide before, but it has some updated information. So as a reminder, we had 135 damaged items. We've bundled those into 51 projects through the FEMA Public Assistance Program. And to date, we've received a little over $25 million in reimbursement through that program. And this shows you the different categories of work. So as I was saying before, the category A and B, that's the work that FEMA's continuing on now. And then those categories E and G, that's in the permanent work. That's the kind of stuff that they're stalled. But great news that we've received this reimbursement. As you can see in the circle graphic, we have $64 million that's been obligated. That means those funds are available for us to request reimbursement based on actuals. But as you can see in the yellow, we still have a lot of work to do to move those projects towards obligation. So progress is happening, still work to come.
Obligation is the point at which you're going to get the money.
Correct.
It's a funny
That's when
term.
it goes to the state.
It's a technical term, but to the rest
Correct.
of us, it means you're going to get the money.
Right. That means we can turn in our receipts and get paid back for it. So you've seen this slide twice before. I'll just note that when we brought this to you in January, all of our projects were at the beginning of that phase 2, where we were just trying to record what was damaged and share that with FEMA. When we came back in August, we had 37 projects that were still in this kind of impact and eligibility, and only 5 projects in obligation. So I think it's really great now that we can see that's down to 8 in that kind of project formulation and up to 18 in the obligation. So just kind of showing some of the progress we're making, because I know it's hard to see when we're not doing a lot of construction on the ground to be able to demonstrate stuff's happening. So moving on to the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. As a reminder, this is $1.4 billion in FEMA funds that get administered by the state North Carolina Emergency Management. That's what NCEM stands for. That's a division of the Department of Public Safety. It has 2 main aspects to that program. One that is infrastructure grants that public entities can apply for. We've submitted over $400 million in grants. We've had some good conversations, but no determinations on those grants yet. The other side is the private property piece, where our property owners have the opportunity, if they choose, to get bought out, to elevate their property, to stabilize it. And so the numbers you see in here are the current applications we have that are within the city of Asheville limits. The good news here, the thing that's changed, is that 3 have been approved. So that's the first that we've seen since the storm. I know that's very slow, but at least we're seeing a little bit of movement. And since we're finally seeing some movement, we can turn the corner and talk about what happens next. So last week, the state was here to have a kickoff meeting with all the property owners in Buncombe County that were in that batch that was approved. And so what happens next is that the state moves forward with doing a appraisal of the property based on the pre-Helene market conditions. Then there's some back and forth with the homeowner or the property owner. They still have the chance to opt out if they don't like the offer that's being made, but that process can take up to 90 days. If the property owner continues to opt into the program, then the state will use a contractor to clear the site. That can also take 90 days. And then after that site work is complete, that's when it's deed restricted to open space and then transferred to the local jurisdiction. So we're looking at like a 6-month window for those first 3 properties if they choose to stay in the program before they come to the city. We want to respect people's right to participate in this program voluntarily and wouldn't disclose which properties those are until they're in our custody. So moving on to the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, or CDBG-DR. As a reminder to those at home that might be watching, this funding has a number of different allocations ranging from housing, economic revitalization, and infrastructure is one of them. And I just want to close the loop on where we were when we talked last at your February 24th Policy, Finance, and Infrastructure meeting. So just as a high level, this program's goal is long-term recovery, restoration, revitalization, and resilience. And then based on that feedback that you provided, we've made some revisions to the infrastructure allocations to look like so. So what we heard was that water was a priority, and we heard leaving that as is for now. And then, so we looked at the parks. French Broad River Park was the highest evaluated project, so we took a smaller reduction from that. And then a slightly larger reduction by a percentage from the Azalea Park project. So you can see the current, the original allocated amount, the percent reduction, the revised, and what that leaves is $2.125 million to look at Resilience Hub investments. We did have a mathematical error, so I wanted to show that that's the 0.5 from the water. So just to make sure there wasn't like different numbers and different presentations without a record. Do you have a question?
Well, if someone's watching this meeting but did not watch the Policy and Finance meeting, you'll miss the part where these are not the only funds that are going towards these areas of recovery. There are other additional funds layered on top.
Correct,
Right.
for the projects,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
This is just the CDBG-DR component. There's
Correct.
a
One
whole
layer.
PA part and, yeah.
Correct. So if you look at the Policy, Finance, and Infrastructure meeting from February 24th or from the February 10th Infrastructure Recovery Board, we show the funding stack per project that we're trying to deploy towards these.
And then another concept that might be new, because it was new to me when Shanika brought resilience hubs to our council retreat back in 2021. I was like, what even is a resilience hub? But after Hurricane Helene, we did it. So odds are, if you're not familiar with the words, you might have participated or received help. A resilience hub is neighborhood support, so you can provide emergency response at the street level. It can be food security, community gardens. It can be electricity backup if there's a grid failure because the day is really hot or really cold. It can be water filtration, food pantry, community space, communications hubs. So we've been exercising this tool, and what this symbolizes for me is actually implementing the neighborhoods being able to be safer, and it's a critical infrastructure that we hadn't identified any funding for yet. So I appreciate staff looking at this.
Yeah, so then the next steps would be to move forward with the 2 parks projects and the water project, looking at those revised levels that we just talked about. Then looking at our action plan and the program manuals to figure out how those would connect with the potential investments that Councilperson Roney was just speaking to. I know that there was a desire to fund additional resources in this category, so staff is recognizing that and working on how we identify those resources, and we'll be able to come back to you as they come available, what those opportunities will be. And we'll continue to work on the Resilience Hub mapping project so that we can align that work with what we're learning about the CDBG-DR land to figure out what's the easiest way to make these funds accessible to our community. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's opportunities to shape this work with our community. So For the 2 parks projects, we're getting community input now on the concepts that are out there to see what people are evaluating and what they want to see in those parks. There's an online survey that's open now through March 16th. There's some videos you can watch. You can fill those out. That link will take you there. There's also 2 pop-up events, the Community Engagement Market at Pisgah View Apartments, and if you're a dog lover out there, there's a Rough and Roll, which I had to look up, even though I have a dog, at Riverbend Park, where there'll also be an information booth. So that's 3 ways to engage in that project. And then the Resilience Hub Mapping Project also has an online survey that's really designed for organizational leaders that feel like they were providing these hub services in response to Helene, so we can understand more about what happened, where it happened, who was served, see some of the gaps that might exist. And then the project team's working on a day of listening for April 18th, and that's for individuals to come and speak about how they utilize these services from the other aspect, of, from a user instead of a provider. We don't have the details on where and the time, but that link takes you to the project page where they will be once they get confirmed. So that's really what I was here to talk to you about today. Just want to make sure that the community knows and everyone knows, like, recovery work is happening. We're working on maximizing that cost recovery. We're trying to take this feedback to drive that decision making. So unless you have any other questions, that's all from me. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to our public hearings agenda. We have 2 items tonight under our public hearings agenda. The first is a public hearing to conditionally rezone 230 Sardis Road from industrial district to residential expansion conditional zone, and Will Palmquist is here.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm Will Palmquist with the Planning and Urban Design Department, and I'm here to present this conditional zoning petition for the project known as 230 Sardis Apartments. Here you can see the project site located in the Anka area of western Asheville. It's about a 9-acre site right on the city boundary with Buncombe County. You can see there's an existing building on the site. It's a former plastic manufacturing company. You can see some of the other land uses in the area, including some light industrial uses, and also the existing Graymont Apartments, which is to the southwest of the project site. The existing zoning is industrial. Due to the project proposing more than 50 residential units, a conditional zoning to the residential expansion district is required. The existing future land use as designated in the city's comprehensive plan is industrial manufacturing. Due to the incompatibility of that future land use with the residential expansion zoning district, staff is proposing to update the future land use designation in the comp plan to residential neighborhood, which would be a better match for that zoning district for consistency. And here you can see the site plan of the proposed development. It's an L-shaped building that fronts along Sardis Road and Graymont Lane. It's a 4- and 5-story building with 180 units total. The 5 stories would be on the outside of the building as it's built into the hillside, and the 4-story portion of the building would be on the interior facing the parking lot. You can see some of the other amenities proposed on the site plan, including new sidewalks along Sardis Road and Graymont Lane, the parking lot itself, playground, dog park, pool, and amenity area for the future residents. And then just the elevation drawings proposed by the applicant. Relatively prototypical multifamily apartment style building with various bays and balconies proposed on the exterior. There are 2 specific conditions associated with this conditional zoning seeking technical modifications to standards in the Unified Development Ordinance. The first is a request to reduce the required widths of sidewalks along Sardis Road, Graymont Lane, and internal to the site. That's a request to reduce from the required 10-foot wide standard to a 5-foot wide standard. There is also a request regarding the location of proposed street trees along Graymont Lane in excess of the 20-foot maximum distance from the edge of the pavement. Do you want to check my notes quickly, though? Okay. You might want to clarify, I think it's actually supposed to be Sardis Road because it's an NCDOT roadway. They are particular about street trees being located in their rights-of-way, so the applicant is proposing the street trees be located outside of the right-of-way, and that means it would be further than the maximum 20-foot distance between the edge of pavement and the location of the trees that our UDO requires. So I believe that should read Sardis Road because that's the NCDOT maintained roadway where Graymont Lane's a privately maintained street. So the project has been reviewed and approved with conditions by the Technical Review Committee on January 5th. It was also approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission at its February 4th meeting with a condition to clarify the minimum sidewalk width along Sardis Road as being the 5-foot wide request. Regarding the project's consistency with the comprehensive plan, the proposed future land use of residential neighborhood would support this type of project in that it would provide more housing diversity in the form of an apartment building. The project would also support a number of goals in the comprehensive plan, including to encourage responsible growth, increase and diversify the housing supply, and make streets more walkable, comfortable, and connected. For those reasons, staff concurs with the Planning and Zoning Commission and recommends approval of the proposed conditional zoning. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I have my evergreen question, which is probably for the applicant. If there is any plan for renewable energy, or if there is at least nothing that would prohibit it from being an option in the future.
Yes, staff did not receive any information on that subject. Nothing to my knowledge would preclude the possibility of some kind of solar or alternative energy installation, but we don't have any specific information at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If this project had been in a zone that allowed some of the upzoning we did along corridors, transit corridors, what would their process have looked like?
This specific project would still have to go through a conditional zoning process. We did increase the thresholds for level 3 conditional projects in commercial districts if there's affordability components,
Right.
Certain minimum affordability requirements being met. This project being a market rate housing would not qualify for those.
I was trying to recall the square footage. Do you remember?
100,000.
Was it 100?
I
Yeah.
believe it's.
Wait, are you saying, so if it had, it still wouldn't have?
It's,
Yeah, so even if it had affordability included, because it's not in a commercial district that we had the higher thresholds for, it would still require conditional zoning.
But it's in industrial?
Correct.
Geez,
So I didn't.
seems like a,
well, I'm bringing it up because I wonder if that needs to be
right.
more
addressed.
widely used. In that way, a project like this could come to us with some affordability baked in, or just not come to us, in other words, if they
Right.
baked in some affordability.
I guess if council wants to gatekeep anytime you rezone industrial sites, because the lack of industrial sites in the city, that would be a consideration. Anyway, one that I've heard previously, but.
Well, and that came up recently with Costco and the Chamber of Commerce letter. So this is a loss of manufacturing and industrial land. Is there any concern at staff level on that overall?
It's
just says-
it's owned by BSF, right?
That-
That's what I looked up.
Correct. So we do have folks from Economic Community Development here to speak a little bit more about general economic development strategies regarding industrial manufacturing, if you'd like to hear more from those staff members present. As far as the conditional zoning goes, because it supports goals in the comprehensive plan and with the amendment of the future land use can be compatible with the future land use and generally compatible with the surrounding land uses, planning staff didn't have specific concerns about the appropriateness of this specific application.
Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
Any other, do we want the applicant to come address? I think Councilwoman Maroney had a question. Any other comments or information from the applicant before we open the public hearing? At your option.
Good evening. My name is Derek Allen. I'm with Allen, Stahl & Kilborn. I'm a land use lawyer, and I'm representing the applicant CIP Construction. I have a couple of members, Paul Smith and Dennis Burton from CIP, that are here with us this evening, as well as our site engineer, Warren Sugg from CDC. I'll keep this real brief. I think this one is relatively straightforward. Just want to answer a couple of the questions. There's no plan for any renewable in terms of solar on top of the buildings here. The HVAC components are on top of this building. I've asked them to take a look if there's some other things that they can do, and they have promised to do that. In terms of the industrial piece of this one, the Graymont property, that is a multifamily project that sits in the county and wasn't really shown on the maps because this is right on the city line, is a comparable apartment complex, and this is really the other half of that. And so this site sits in between that multifamily project on one side and primarily single-family detached dwellings on the other side. We did start this project back in the beginning of November. We've gone through the pre-application, the neighborhood meeting. There were a few folks that showed up, and no one showed up to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on this one. We had unanimous approval at that PZC hearing, and we think this is a good project for one of our biggest need, which is more housing in this area. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can answer, or Warren can answer questions about the site plan itself, and the applicant can answer any questions that you might have about programming.
To add some clarity, I think I heard you say something I've heard before. The HVAC units are on top of the building. So what we've heard in some past situations, and then why I ask the question the way that I do, is that if the HVAC units can be moved to one side, then the building is essentially solar ready if a future use is desired. Otherwise, it's very haphazard and limits the opportunity for the future. So I appreciate that consideration.
Sure. And one of the things, as you and I have talked about, is the way that it's set up right now in terms of available solar and how it works in North Carolina, is that it really benefits the power company and no one else. And so that's something that we should be pushing for from a city level to make changes at the General Assembly. And
Agreed.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a question. I'd actually posed it to our staff, but maybe you'll be able to better tell me. We've been talking a lot as a community going through budget season around property tax and revenues and revenue streams. Is there any projected value on this building that would help us understand what kind of revenue we might receive in property taxes?
I think looking at what the tax value is of that Graymont side, which is $38 million. If you look at that, I think that's a pretty comparable range to give you scope and scale on it. And right now, the tax value on that property is more like $3 million.
You're talking about the one to the behind it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, hold on. I had that up, actually. Is it a similar number of units, do you recall?
It is a similar number of units, yes.
Well, annoyingly, they value each building, so we won't look at that.
So is there active displacement happening? There's an existing
No,
unit?
No.
This site where they're proposing is currently an industrial, it's owned by BASF.
I was gonna say, okay,
Yeah.
it's not
But
any kind of housing.
behind it, it's sort of wrapped by an apartment complex that I believe we approved a few years ago.
It was in the county. It's in the
Oh,
county.
it's in the, there was one that was like partly in the county and partly in the city, and I couldn't remember if it was this, because there's another one out there that.
Yeah, this building is where Citizen Times was.
Oh, that's right,
Mhm.
okay. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
The one behind it. So the one behind it, this is the, yeah, maybe more, yeah. But let's see what it currently brings, because it currently,
And that's appreciated.
because it's not undeveloped land currently, you know, it's bringing in
Right.
something.
I just wanted to confirm that technical modification for the tree distance from the edge of pavement is supposed to be from Sardis Road. So the project conditions currently say Graymont Lane, and that should be amended as part of any condition of approval to incorporate that change.
Did you get that?
Wait.
Well, would you mind stating that one more
course.
time? So we have
So,
this for the record.
Yes, condition number, I can pull it up in a second here. The condition regarding the technical modifications requested for the project, there are two. One is regarding the spacing of trees from the edge of pavement, the maximum distance in excess of the 20-foot maximum. The conditions currently read that's on Graymont Lane, but in actuality, that modification is being requested for Sardis Road.
What condition number is that?
I can tell you in a couple seconds. So,
12, number 2.
12, that sounds right.
We did the math on the tax, the property tax increase, it's around 120,000, 30,000?
Maybe 130,000
from
new.
what it currently
12.2.
is, yeah.
Above what is currently.
Currently, it only brings in 28,000 for its industrial use. For what it's worth.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good figure for us to kind of always
I
talk
agree.
about when we look at these projects. The next one too.
Okay, any other questions right now from council before I open the public hearing? As soon as I find my, oh, here we go, sorry, too many tabs open. All right, I have one person signed up to speak under this item. You'll have 3 minutes. I'm opening the public hearing. Please watch the lights on the lectern, and our speaker is Andrew Paul.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy. I am a lead organizer with Asheville for All. I'm here to express support for this project. You guys know we have a big housing gap that we need to fill in the city, and that means we need to say yes to housing. We need to do it yesterday, but the second best time to do that is today. I think just the one thing I want to point out here that hasn't been mentioned is this is, by my calculations, a less than a 15-minute walk to 2 different schools. I've become kind of obsessed with the idea of having housing near schools and allowing children to walk to schools, also allowing teachers that need housing to be near schools. You guys probably know the state of North Carolina makes it really hard to put schools near housing. And we know that having housing near schools benefits the schools, it increases achievement, and it actually benefits the neighborhoods as well. So I love the idea that we can take some housing and put it in this area where we're sort of seeing more housing come already. I think it's a good thing for the area, and it's a good thing for the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, do I have questions, comments, or a motion? Everybody hold your motions.
Council, I've just emailed you an amendment to reflect what Will has provided you with just one change. If you could just read the motion with the amendment language that I just provided you.
So read the motion, add the amendment language.
Exactly. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I move to approve the conditional zoning request for the property located at 230 Sardis Road from industrial to residential expansion conditional zone, as well as amend the future land use map from industrial manufacturing to residential neighborhood, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, meets the development needs of the community in that the request, 1, prioritizes greater density of development overall throughout the city as appropriate, 2, increases the rental housing supply, and 3, eliminates gaps in the citywide sidewalk network. Condition 12.2 is amended to substitute the reference to Graymont Lane with Sardis Road related to maximum street tree distance from edge of pavement.
Second.
Okay, Brad, did we, anyone mess that up, or we're good? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Council, any questions, comments before we vote on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, we have one other public hearing item. That's a public hearing to conditionally rezone 383 North Louisiana Avenue from Office District to Office District Conditional Zone. And now we have Sam Starbaum here. Not that it's a competition. Also, Sam, you don't have a beard, so already.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Again, for the record, my name is Sam Starbaum. I am a Planner 3 with the Planning and Urban Design team here with the City of Asheville. And before us today, we have a Level 2 conditional zoning petition for an 89-unit multifamily complex, of which 100 of those 89 units, or 100% of those 89 units will be at 80% AMI or below. We will, of course, look at what all of this means later in my presentation, but before I do that, I want to start with where we are in Asheville. Where are we in Asheville? We are in West Central Asheville. More importantly, we are in the legacy neighborhood of Emma. You can see where that is to the right. Emma and its neighborhood boundaries are in the green. The Asheville jurisdiction is what is shown clearly, and then Buncombe County jurisdiction is in gray. Emma stands alone and is fairly unique in that it is both in Buncombe County and City of Asheville jurisdictions. The subject site, which is 3.13 acres, is of course in the City of Asheville jurisdiction, which is why it's before you this evening. You can see the subject parcel highlighted in blue just in the left image. It is north of the North Louisiana Avenue and Patton intersection, right below, just south of the Hazel Mill and North Louisiana intersection. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the existing and proposed zoning this evening. We have an office zoning district, and we are going to Office 1CZ. Some of you, many of you, or possibly none of you are probably wondering, why is this before you this evening? And the answer is this. Under the UDO section 778, the residential expansion district is only reserved for level 3 projects. This is not a level 3 project, so this is not going to an expansion district. Moreover, this cannot stay at a level 2 because of existing zoning district regulations that govern building height, building massing, and then that footprint, which make the architectural vernacular of the office district. Make this building impossible, right? So there is, for example, in the office district, a 4,000 square foot building footprint minimum. The building footprint for this 89-unit multifamily building is 27,898 square feet. So we're well in excess of that. Variance is something that may have been an option, but because this is a LIHTC project, it is time sensitive. They have to have all their entitlements by May 14th. Which means that going to a level 2 conditional zoning, which is not to an expansion district, but to Office 1CZ, was the clearest path forward from an administrative point of view. So again, we are at Office. This is being proposed to go to Office 1CZ. We'll look a little bit at that later. I also want to spend some time here, as I do with all my presentations, looking at what the future land use map says, because this is what we do to evaluate our recommendation. This area is a traditional neighborhood. This particular parcel is in the traditional neighborhood future land use designation. But you can see from the image on the presentation that there are quite a few different designations. It is crucially very close to urban center and also employment and anchor institution. I'll get more into this later when I get to compliance. But there are two things that need to be pointed out here. The first of which, of course, is that no change in the FLU designation is required as a result of this legislative action. And then secondly, let's spend some time looking at what a traditional neighborhood is. And again, this is a teaser for later, but basically it is important of note that traditional neighborhoods offer opportunities for infill housing in order to improve the supply and mix of housing options. Period, end of sentence, and that's what we're looking at today. So this is the site plan for that 89-unit multifamily building. As I had mentioned, 89 units, 100% of which are 80% AMI or below. And that's actually not necessarily the case. This is actually just what we could get the applicant's legal team to stipulate to in the conditions document, that they will put 80% AMI or below for 100%. We know from the LIHTC application that it is actually much more deeply affordable than that. There are units, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units at affordability levels of 30%, 50%, 60%, and 70% AMI. So this is deeply affordable, but in the conditions document, that document E, Exhibit E, you're gonna find 100% at 80% AMI or below. This building is a 3-4 story split. That is simply because the topography changes significantly moving south from Hazel Mill Road. And then this is also where that second technical modification comes in, why we need this CZ. The max height in the office district is 40 feet. This building is asking for a max height of 48 feet just to make that work. And then as I had alluded to earlier, the office has a maximum building footprint of 4,000 square feet. This is proposing 27,898 square feet, which is significantly above that. And then lastly, it is important to note that this is one of those areas that was changed in the transit supportive corridor amendments that we took through last March. One of those many amendments is that there are no parking minimums required, right? So the parking required is 0 for this, but nevertheless, the applicant is proposing 116 spaces. That is still well below the 178 maximum parking spaces. You can also see from the image, it is compliant in that it is meeting all the landscaping standards that is in 711.1 of the UDO. You can also faintly see, I'm not sure how well that shows up for you, but in the bottom right, you can see where there is the play place, those trees, and some of those other trees that are grayed out or a little transparent. That is where the tree canopy preservation and open space are being met. But you can also see from this image that there are sidewalks along Hazel Mill and North Louisiana. Those are being proposed at 5 feet, which brings us to conditions, right? So 2 of these conditions are that the proposed sidewalks be 5 feet for internal and external. At the February Planning and Zoning Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend that the applicant team work with the City Transportation Department at that final TRC level to explore widening the external sidewalks along North Louisiana and Hazel Mill to 6 feet. That way there is more pedestrian access moving to the anchor and employment institutions. This area is served by both the WE1 and the W5 transit lines, so pedestrian access to those is important, or at least it was to Planning and Zoning Commission in February. And then those other 2 things I've already talked about, just that building footprint max, and then the height of 48, where only 40 is allowed in the office district. So these are the building elevations. I won't spend too much time on this one. I'll spend more time on the other one. I do think that the bottom 2 images, the elevation north and the elevation west, really show what type of topography the applicant team is working with here. There is a considerable grade challenge. It's about 20 feet in difference. So this is where you see that 3-4 split and then how it goes gently down the slope towards Patton Avenue. This is the other elevation slide. This is where you'll get the material palette used for this. There are no shockers here. This is exactly what you'll see in most of Asheville. You can see that it is a mix of stone veneer, brick, horizontal fiber siding, and then shingles for that roof. Most of your roof pitches 6-12, 12-12, very much in what you would find for the Mountain Modern multifamily architectural design type. So this slide is brief. I always include this just because it tells us the story of how we got here and what the approval process was before we get into staff recommendation. It was approved in December by the Technical Review Committee at the initial review on December 1st. And then, as I had said earlier, it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 4th. It was approved unanimously, 7-0. There were some recommendations and conditions that came with that. That is in your document packet. And now I want to spend some time, again, looking at how this complies or does not comply with the future land use designation and the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. And I thought I had another slide. Well, it must have been a different, I'm going to go back real quick because this is different from the presentation I had. One of the things I did just want to stress, there was another one talking about the future land use designation.
Traditional neighborhood, I had mentioned, is about infill housing. What I did not mention earlier is the types of zoning that are allowed there and the types of building it seeks to have in a traditional neighborhood. You will find in Living Asheville, it does mention that RM6, RM8, office and CZ are appropriate zoning designations. That's exactly what's being proposed here. We find that this is wholly and totally appropriate. It also calls for that mix of housing and actually specifically enumerates exactly what is envisaged for a traditional neighborhood, and that is single-family homes, townhomes, accessory dwelling units, and multifamily structures that blend seamlessly, and that is what's happening here, because you can see to the northwest as you drive sort of through and deeper into the Emma Legacy neighborhood, that mix that is mentioned in traditional neighborhoods. So that is one of the things we consider. Then we also look at those comprehensive goals. This does encourage responsible growth. It increases and diversifies the housing supply, especially along transit corridors, which council had mentioned that is crucially important last March. It also promotes development and availability of affordable and workforce housing close to those anchor and employment institutions. And it is not for any one of those reasons, but for all of those reasons combined with that preponderance evidence, staff agrees with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and finds that it is wholly and totally appropriate to support approval of this conditional zoning. Thank you.
We were just
There's
noting,
not more? Okay.
I was just noting, I appreciate your page numbers on the reference
Yeah.
to the comp plan. I have a few questions. I don't
Go
know
for
if
it.
someone else was about to go. I've noticed, this is maybe more your opinion, both these projects requested interior and exterior sidewalk reductions back to 5 feet. It was an action of council at some point to make it 10 feet. Are you seeing that a lot, and are you experiencing it? Any indication if it's like a cost or a site maximization, or is it both? Why are we seeing it so often?
The capital stack required for development today is tenuous, it is difficult, and it is, I think, more expensive. It is one of those, to say that that is the death knell in projects is incorrect, but it is one of those things where it is just very costly to do. That is something I know cost goes on the minds of everyone. Sidewalks are something everyone mentioned too. Sidewalks, I think cost is part of it. There's also room availability. I wish someone with transportation were here to talk about sort of the right-of-way challenges, because right-of-way isn't just the street, it isn't where you drive, that there are also, there's easements for utilities, for stormwater, for things like that. So it is in part cost, it is in part some financing that the city doesn't see because we're not party to, and it is also just a design constraint. We think Planning and Zoning had mentioned and recommended that they go to 6 feet. We think that's appropriate. Anything more than that is going to be a crunch just because of utilities, because of stormwater, and all these other things that are legally there or are underground that you don't see in your daily pedestrian experience.
Wait, P&Z recommended 6 feet?
Yes.
Is that right? You said that, okay.
External.
Okay, just the external.
Sam mentioned Costco, because that's going to be one of their, if they manage to land back here, again, trying to meet all these requirements for their internal road.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
I have do you have more questions?
Go ahead, I'll have more later.
Well, this is one, it might be on your list because you usually ask this. Do we know about the unit split? How many 3-bed, how many?
Yes, we do. I have a brief overview. I would ask the applicant to clean this up. So we do, of those 89 units, 31 are 1-bedroom, 36 are 2-bedroom, and 22 are 3-bedroom. That's what I was able to
Wow.
find on their
That's
LIHTC. And then, of
awesome.
course, there are splits. Again, I want to reiterate for council, which I did in my presentation, that there are 30, 50, 60, and 70% AMI for all of those. So it's not that
Yeah,
like
that's great.
30% AMI just gets one, that there's a mix within all of those.
And a little more good news in there is, this is a LIHTC project, which I guess triggers a whole bunch of its own parking requirements, so I'm assuming that's why
Mhm, yeah,
maybe in
yeah.
there. But it sounds like it's a new LIHTC, possibly a new LIHTC developer to the community, is this?
That is correct. I'll let the applicant's representative speak to that. I will say, I'm glad you brought that up, Councilwoman Turner, is that we do see with LIHTC projects, there are parking is required.
Yeah.
So just because we
Yep.
reduced that parking minimum doesn't mean
Yep.
that they're necessarily able to meet that, again, because of financing complications, which is a reality of the development world today.
Yeah, we see that requirement even in the private lending market.
Yep.
I'll just say I love this project. This is a perfect anti-displacement project.
Take that, Will.
I have to ask my,
Okay.
that's great. We're all on the same team. I have to ask my evergreen question. Is there any plan for renewables or anything that's preventing renewables in the future at this project? Which
I'll
would
let-
help to keep the units more affordable longer.
I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Thank you.
Before we hear from the applicant? Okay, all right, we're ready to hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
Wait a second, are you the, no, I'm just kidding.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, staff. Sam, that was really a thorough report, and that was a funny zinger at Will. I do have the unit breakdown that's straight from the LIHTC application. If I could hand that up, I've got copies for folks.
That's helpful, thank you.
And you'll see the breakdown across the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and the 30%, 50%, 60%, and 70% of AMI. And that 80% AMI as the condition is just to allow for flexibility if this developer isn't the one that goes forward with the project. So we've run into those issues before with super specific conditions, and we're trying to be better about that, but we wanted to show what the project really going to look like. Sam Weldon is here. He represents Blue Ridge Atlantic, which is the applicant in this matter, and the developer. Warren Sugg is the engineer, site engineer for this project again. We started this project back in the spring of 2025, and to Councilmember Turner's question earlier about is this one of those projects that we tried to make as of right? This is the one, and this is how it would fit.
Right.
And the strictures inside the ordinance related to footprint put it into this process that we've been doing now for the last 6 months. And so I think that's one of those things where the intention was missed, and I think that we can clean it up by making it clear in the ordinance that the affordability pieces that are out there can override the footprint designations. There's about 6 zoning districts where this problem comes up, and so I don't think the intention of this council is being manifested in the ordinance right now, but I do think there's a way to fix that, and I would certainly like to see it, and it would save us all time for these projects that are really good projects. Part of this process, as you know, we had a neighborhood meeting. This project is abutting inside the Potter Emma neighborhood. I know that Sam Weldon has had detailed negotiations and talks, actually conversations rather, with Andrea and the others in the Potter Emma neighborhood. I know Andrew's here this evening. I believe those have gone well and were fruitful. In terms of the sustainability measures, there are provisions inside of the LIHTC application process, and I can let Sam come up to talk about those, but there are incentives inside of that that may end up putting some of those measures in place into this project, but the next phase for that LIHTC application process is mid-May, so to be determined on that. In terms of the questions that came up about the recurring request for sidewalk reductions, internal on smaller multifamily sites saves impervious area, allows for more amenities to go in, allows for better parking access. It's just too big for smaller sites. If you're in Biltmore Park, that's a different thing for a 10-foot wide internal sidewalk, but on a smallish apartment site that just doesn't fit. Externally, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but similar for the requirements of the LIHTC program, right? Because you have to have more internal park space, you have to have areas for computer use, there's just all these extra
Programming,
requirements
that's
that
right.
eat up site. Yeah,
Correct.
sorry to interrupt.
And then externally, what we see oftentimes is trying to fit everything in, from utilities to stormwater to DOT right-of-way widths, and then also pulling the sidewalk away from roads. So there is a buffer in between walkways and bikeways and cars going back and forth. So that's the general answer of those kinds of things, but it's specific on each project. This is a little tighter in the roadway to the structures here than in some places, if you've been over there.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to answer any questions. Warren can answer questions about the site plan, and Sam can answer questions about the light type process or programming. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ullman mentioned the bedroom counts, and I just wanted to share, if you didn't understand the point she was making, we had expressed some concern in recent years that all the affordable projects we were seeing get approved and built were limited to like 1 bedrooms and sometimes a 2-bedroom, a lot of efficiencies. So we're starting to worry about family size relocations and family growing in certain areas with affordability options. So I'm just glad to see more of the larger units.
We have a couple people signed up to speak under this item tonight, and so you'll each have 3 minutes. Back again is Andy Paul, and then we have one other person signed up to speak. Ooh, Sam's gonna take him out.
Okay, hey again. I actually want to tell you guys a story. So about a month and a half ago, I started a new position at work. I teach at AB Tech, but my new position has me stationed at a high school. So students in their high school can come to my classroom and get a college class without having to leave, and they get college credit. And so about a month and a half ago, I was getting a tour of the high school, and the staff person giving me the tour, having no idea who I am, said, I want you to know that students here are really diverse. That some of them come from families with a lot of money, and some of them are sleeping in their cars. And yeah, I see your faces. I know a few of you are a teacher, have taught before, and the relationships you form with your students are pretty powerful. And even the most annoying student in your classroom, you want the best for them. And so it sort of struck me when I heard that. So all this is to say that I hope that a family, with a working parent or 2 working parents, a family with a kid going to school in our community, if one such family can find a home in this place, I think that's something worth pursuing. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrea Golden.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrea Golden. I live in the Emma neighborhood, and I'm the director of a neighborhood organization called Boulder Emma. So the neighborhood is Emma, the organization is Boulder Emma. And Boulder Emma has about 400 members who are all neighbors of ours that work together to talk about how to stop displacement. And one of the things that we do is organize our neighborhood council. So when our neighborhood council first heard about this development, there was a lot of apprehension. It's a change to kind of the feel of the neighborhood. We're mostly a mobile home park neighborhood. We had just had an extremely negative experience with a new development coming in on Emma Road on the county side of the neighborhood that brought 0 affordable units. So a lot of apprehension at first. We went to the community meeting where we first met Sam. And, I do want to name, there were neighbors that were nervous in spite of the affordability levels, nervous about traffic, nervous about density, nervous about change. And as a resident and together with our 400 members, we all share those same feelings. There is sadness around losing our semi-rural character as a community. And we do think that we would ask the city and the county to continue to work together on your future land use planning to give communities like ours the tools that we need to determine how can we meet the affordable housing goals and help solve the affordable housing crisis without being asked to change who we are and who we want to be. That said, we brought the proposal back to our neighborhood council and we went through several months of dialogue. We have a highly participatory neighborhood council, and I don't come and make public comment unless the council has voted by consensus for me to bring a message. So I don't just represent myself, I represent many of my neighbors. And we came to the conclusion that although we have sadness around change to neighborhood character. We trust that we can create future land use tools to address that, and that this is exactly the kind of housing that our neighborhood needs. I really want to commend Sam and his team. He met with us over and over and over to help ensure that this housing was actually going to help stabilize our community and not interrupt our community. And so I'm here to express the Emma Neighborhood Council's full consensus in support of this project. And I really, really hope we see future projects like this. I will name, we really like that this had to go through conditional zoning, and I hear the concern about how it slows it down. But without that tool, we wouldn't have been able to potentially come to the table and reach some of the agreements that we made about how to be a good neighbor while joining a neighborhood like ours. So we're actually really thankful that we were given the space and the time, both because of conditional zoning and because of Sam's willingness. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have anyone else signed up to speak under this
I'm ready
item.
to read the motion if you are.
Yes, please.
First, I just wanted to say thank you to the neighbors of the Emma community for coming to City Hall for this decision. Gracias a los vecinos para venir al alimento por esta decisión. I move to approve the conditional zoning request for the property located at 383 North Louisiana Avenue from office off one, it reads, to office conditional zone, and find the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community in that the request, 1, provides infill development in targeted growth areas, 2, increases the supply of housing in proximity to schools, transit, and parks, and 3, rezones property to transit-supportive density in nodal clusters along or near transit corridors.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? We got it? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. You're all welcome to stay, but if you would like to make your mass exodus, that's,
Thank you, planning staff.
thank you. We have one item of unfinished business. This is an item where the public hearing has already been conducted, so there will not be a further public hearing. It is a resolution approving the proposed amendment of the city's 2025-2029 Consolidated Plan to add affordable rental construction as a priority need and goal, and submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and further authorizing the city manager to execute any documents necessary to give effect to this resolution. And Nikki Reed is here to talk about it.
Excellent, thank you so much. Our staff gave the presentation at the public hearing last month. The public comment period is now closed, and we did receive one email recommending support and recommending approval of the amendment. So that is the update, and now our process is concluded, and we're asking for your vote tonight. So thanks, happy to answer any questions.
Is it me, or is the whole night only supportive? Right? We're only getting positive
It was
support.
from our speaker. So the group that he represents was our public comment that we received. So thanks for participating.
Great. Thank you. I think we just need to make a motion because we've already heard it. I'm happy to if we're ready.
Yeah,
We don't
there's
have to
no
do
public,
any-
there's
yeah.
no public hearing.
We're just kind of rectifying what we did
I
last time.
should say
right?
there was already a public hearing.
Right. So I move to adopt a resolution approving the proposed amendment of the city's 2025-2029 Consolidated Plan to add affordable rental construction as a priority need and goal, and submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and further authorizing the city manager to execute any documents necessary to give effect to this resolution.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. That concludes the printed agenda. And now I'm going to move on to general public comment. We have a few people signed up under general public comment. Once again, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please just watch the lights on the lectern. Our first speaker is Paul Howell.
Good evening, council, city attorney, city manager, assistant city manager, and the epoxy that holds everything together, Maggie. At the previous council, I ran out of time when I noticed something. with the numbers in the budget, and it was about the swimming pools. And I see that Walton Street, back in 2016, we asked the city council to save Walton Pool, to renovate it. Save it, because it was historical for us. So, you kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And then finally in 2021, instead of giving us $1.3 million to renovate the pool was shut down. And basically voted on to be replaced with something down at the Grant Center, which isn't a pool, but a pool of water. But anyhow, I looked on there and I seen where it was going to cost $2.5 million to reimagine the pool. So it cost more to reimagine the pool than it did to renovate the pool 10 years later. I looked on there, hold on. Walton Pool opened in 1948. I looked on there and I seen Malvern Hills Pool, which opened in 1936, getting the amount of $5.5 million to renovate their pool, but yet still they're gonna have a pool diet as well. They won't have their swimming, they won't have the diving board, the deep end of the pool. People around here in the mountains swim. Everybody don't get in the pool and wade. Y'all giving us these diet pools for all this money that people cannot enjoy. If you want to renovate our pools, return them to the way they were. There shouldn't be no reason why Walton Street pool can't come back. You can spend $5.5 million on the pool that's 12 years older than it, while you can't spend a couple of million on the pool that's also historical. I'm saying it's a whole lot of questions about people on our council not looking out for people of this city and looking out more for outsiders and transplants. And I'm saying it's getting close to time for the 2-minute warning. And people are tired. So y'all need to think about it. Also, who in the world in their right mind would put a doggone dog park at Aston Park where kids and grown people play it all the time, toss their frisbees? Who would put a dog park down there? Why would you take a city park and put a doggone dog park in it? Lord, November can't get here fast enough. Thank you.
Gino Perez. That's as high as it goes.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Gino, and tonight I am here to speak about the redesign of our public transit network and the human cost of removing routes. The city's Art Choices report states that ridership and coverage are competing goals. You cannot spend the same dollar on both. In that report, the city's transit consultant defines coverage as insurance against isolation. Yet, by putting ridership first, the new model throws that insurance away. It cuts the share of residents near transit from 61% to 40%. That means 1 in 3 people who today have transit will lose it. Hardest hit are the most vulnerable. The ARC Concepts report admits that a ridership-first model strips transit access from nearly 1 in 4 low-income residents and people of color. This is abandonment by design. For seniors and disabled residents, your route map decides who gets paratransit and who gets left behind. By law, ADA van service can only go where your buses go. When the bus map shrinks, the ADA map shrinks with it. For a senior on those routes, that means losing 2 lifelines at once. The bus stop that was once within reach, and the ADA van that served that route. When that van stops coming, the city ends at their front door. Older adults make up nearly 1/3 of Buncombe County. In a county this old, in a city this old, your planning must prioritize coverage. Because when you cut a bus line, you cut twice. Before you is a choice to define what the city of Asheville values. Above all else, value our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha Schwade.
Hello, I'm Natasha Schwade. My hair is straight, so it looks different than normal. Anyway, so as we build for the future and rebuild after Helene, I want to make sure we consider the true cost of things. With the expected rises in fuel costs, we need to build with this kind of resilience in mind. We very well could end up in a situation similar to the oil embargo of the 70s, which my dad has told me stories of how it brought society to a halt. For example, the fuel needed for construction equipment in a lot of these developments would be like an excavator or a skid steer or a lull. Also the generators to power pumps, shop vacs, power tools, the truck and the trailers to bring all of this equipment onto the site. All of that equipment is needed to clear the land, dig the foundation, pour the concrete slabs. And the concrete only has 30 minutes from the plant to the pour, or it will be rejected. So all of these trucks are moving things back and forth, and this is all before building the walls. So as a community, we have to make sure we're considering the true cost of development, and we need to build for true local resilience. This entails things like opening up more options for people to move around, like multimodal transportation, and finding ways to release our daily concerns from gas prices and traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the folks that are signed up under public comment. That concludes our meeting. Council, we have another meeting on March 24th, which is going to be very long, our work session. So, rest up. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.